Hey, this is Notser, and today we're taking a look at King George V. This is the Tier 7 British battleship. In this matchup, we actually had an outstanding game, and it went all the way down to the wire, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. For my build on the ship, I'm using the following. Incoming fire alert, vigilance, adrenaline rush, emergency repair, fire prevention, and improved repair party. For the commander, main armament protection, lower chance of flood and fire, main gun accuracy, and rudder shift. Now, the reason I use the skills that I've chosen is because they allow for active maneuvering, enhancing the tankability, and when shells are flung at you and they land close to you, you generate potential damage, which then in turn with this build lowers the cooldown on repair parties, so I can stay aggressive early and often. And I like playing the tank battleship. It's just a natural fit for me as a tank player. I understand that, there's value in players shooting at you, and this will be no exception. We're going to try to help with the primary flank, which in this instance is the east side for me, and see what happens. Now, our friendly DD is not moving forward, and that means that we will, of course, be body spotting, and we do indeed spot the body of the enemy, probably a DD, because he's moving forward. And finally, my friendly DD is actually moving out. And first catch of the day is an enemy Bayern who decides to fire his guns. Well, we're going to return fire with high explosive. The King George has 356, which compared to the Bayern is small with the 380s. He can overmatch my nose. I cannot overmatch his nose. But I do have high explosive, so it will work pretty well. If you notice on the screen, improved repair party readiness flashed up. That is for potential damage, which comes from, obviously, torpedoes being shot at you or shells being fired at you. But, we're positioned in a bow-in position, and I am just trying to do chip damage at this point. We got a friendly cruiser that did decide to move forward pretty rapidly and is now closer than my ship. And I'm afraid that maybe he'll be the primary threat to the enemy and they'll change their AP broadside and knock him out. That's what I'm always rooting for. I'm rooting for players to get too focused on trying to damage me. And whoa! Out of nowhere, the enemy DD shows up and I am kind of flustered because this is not what I was expecting. And he seems to be open firing on me. And maybe he sent torpedoes. Now, I keep pinging, I keep yelling because my cruiser friend right next to me has refused to switch his target. It's a DD that's less than 8 kilometers away from you. There really shouldn't be any other target that he's firing at because that's a huge threat. And of course, the shell that I fire is a little behind and it also disperses not into the enemy, and we just have to sit there and take it. Incoming high explosive sets the ship on fire. I decide to aggressively use my damage control. Now, the reason I do that is because I want to weather continued high explosive and also use the islands to block line of sight whenever I have the opportunity, which we don't really have the opportunity with this Bayern. This Bayern can punch right through most of our armor like it's paper, and I don't want to show too much side, so he'll, easily punish the Citadel. The Brits have great high explosive. They have great heals, but they have vulnerable citadels. So you've got to be mindful. Now, I aggressively swapped to AP, hoping that maybe I would get a broadside cruiser. We didn't get that. In fact, we missed our shells on the Bayern, which is unfortunate. He is retreating, so I have to gather myself and decide for myself, okay, who is the next victim? Is it these cruisers over across the other side of the map, which, we're going to take a shot. We do have AP. This is the ideal target to fire at in the King George with AP. But once again, we're a little behind the target, and we do get an overpin, but that's all we get. Standard battle is frustrating because, yes, this is going to be a great game and really well put together back and forth, but in the early stages, it usually is just people camp until they can't camp anymore. And you kind of need to do a little bit of both. You need to camp, and you also need to be proactive and take advantage of any window that's open. And I tried desperately to take advantage of that broadside battleship. But of course, dispersion wanted to take that away from us. We couldn't get the kind of damage I was looking for, and instead, I am forced to try and commit to angling against the enemy aircraft carrier. Don't be surprised that you have to do this. It's obviously frustrating as a big battleship, but it's going to set me up for success by respecting the carrier's damage potential. Now, if we take stock of the other parts of the map, we'll notice that the west side doesn't really have a lot of defense. Oh, and we just barely squeaked by to avoid 2 more torpedoes. So that's nice to avoid that kind of damage. The west side doesn't look very good. We've only got 2 friendlies there, and most of my team seemingly has come over to the east side to reinforce it. On the enemy team, very similar. They've got reinforcements, and they have a good defensive line. They're not going to fall easily on the east side. Not without some DD doing some advanced spotting and maybe some advanced torpedoing. I am trying to come back to the map, and while I was coming back, I noticed that I might have a little bit of an opportunity to contribute against that French battleship, and we miss just the hair of the ship because he's rotating around the island. But our friendly cruiser gets way too close and gets obliterated, and just like that, it's 2-2. Now, I noticed the ship in the background firing, of course, so I'm going to fire at him. Also notice that there is a Cyclone that is taking hold. That's going to be a tough one because that's going to deny vision, and there is a couple DDs and cruisers that could potentially spot me with 2 kilometers easily of safety net. So I need to try and get some damage done and maybe potentially sail intelligently to counter maybe a surprise. It's one thing that's nice about Cyclone is you can surprise the enemy more frequently. But we get a nice high explosive on that enemy who's camping a little bit. We also set him on fire. I don't know exactly who he's aiming at, but I'm not complaining. We need a kill. The enemy team has already gotten their 3rd kill. We need our 4th kill to try and keep up with this. And it does look like it will indeed be accurate. Nice. So we take out the enemy, and that's pretty good. The enemy aircraft carrier is lurking. The Cyclone, of course, has not taken hold yet, so there's still plenty of spotting. But just as I said, every kill that we get, the enemy gets a kill. Now, they did lose their submarine, so there is some situations where they'll be at a disadvantage versus my team. We have 1-on-1. We have a DD and a submarine. They have 2 DDs. In their instances, I would probably play aggressive and use my speed to overwhelm because there is only 1 DD left on the enemy team. And I don't really have to worry too much about a submarine because submarines, they have a tough time. They've got to juggle a ton of things. They basically do a worse role of what the DDs are offering. And, it's nice that they can hide underwater, but they just don't have the speed to move around the map to put out fires. So, east side, it's pretty contested. I'm going back to try and deal with the west because the west did run over my team. And someone is clearly attempting to capture the base. So we need to attempt to shoo him away or kill him. And the longer that he attempts to capture the base, the larger lead that they will get. So as we're approaching, we notice it's an enemy DD. That's nice. We have high explosive loaded, which is the perfect shell type for this matchup. And of course we fire and we get good, decent damage. Now I could angle and fire the back gun in the time it takes for my guns to reload. So I'm gonna kind of do both because I feel like having both as an option is better. Now, the player reveals his location, and that reveals that we want to kill him. And we, of course, shoot him dead. But torpedoes are always a threat. So we're going to go thin, and we're going to sail continuously this direction. There are a couple enemy ships that were last spotted on the west side, so, wherever they could be. And yes, we cut the speed. Vigilance is great as well. The rudder shift, it all is a combined package. That's why I go this build. on my battleships. It enables aggressive tankiness. It still has core skills like emergency or fire prevention or adrenaline rush, but it just operates so much easier than the norm. The normal long-range battleship suffers in the 1 versus 1 in the mid to close range because they obviously are going for a specific type of play. My specific play style is more tanky. So I noticed that obviously we have a friendly battleship down the center. Good luck with that. For a brief moment, we had a clear advantage, but that is no longer the case. The enemy has actually gotten 2 extra kills, and they are now about 150 points ahead of my team. The last known position of the 2 western ships could suggest that they are coming this way. So I'm just going to get myself in a ready position. If we can, figure out a way to take out or slow down, that would be 2 potential ships that could normalize the team's matchup. But the longer this game drags on, the more the point advantage is working against my team. So we come across this enemy cruiser, and of course I have high explosive, which I fire at the waterline, hoping for a decent amount of damage, which 11,000 is a good amount of damage for sure. And I aggressively switch to AP. Now, I aggressively switch to AP, expecting a broadside and easily citadel him. 356 is small, so the overmatch is not as potential available. But he's like broadside. So we fire at the waterline, and of course, it hits the water, and it hits the water just enough that it doesn't even make contact with the enemy ship. We lose out on this gun reload, and I'm thankful that I chose to let the fire burn. In this situation, he has torpedoes. So it would be really bad if I put the fire out, he lands a torpedo or 2, he lands a fire or 2, and all of a sudden we've got like 3 or 4 dots. That would be really bad. So I'm willing to sit here, take some dot damage, and once again, overpins too hard. He ends up getting a second fire, so I activate my damage control. He also sent his torpedoes, which I'm trying to be as narrow as possible as I can. We do okay job. Guns are in position. I could activate my scout aircraft, but honestly, we're so far behind, I really need to try and save on my resources. I just want to get this guy dead. And he slows his roll, but it's just not enough. We take out the target, and just like that, we bring it back. It's 3 versus 4, which is great. I'm looking around, trying to get a bearing on, where my teammates are, where everyone could be. Friendly aircraft carrier is in the strait between the 2 islands, or the 2 spawn points. We did have a friendly battleship, but he just got sunk. So it is 2 versus 4. And I'm not feeling pretty good, because that aircraft carrier, he's in a tough spot. If the enemy were to, say, rush him, he would he would be dead. So I really, truly need to rush back to his position. I need to try and salvage his life for long enough so that we can make a difference. That's what I need to try and do. If you look at the mini-map, last known position of the enemy DD, the far out east, he just showed up on the mini-map from the aircraft carrier spotting. So I know that pretty much the entire enemy team is concentrated in the center of the map. Save, of course, for the aircraft carrier. I'll deal with you later myself. Right now we need to keep the friendly carrier because 3 ships crashing down on 1 position. It's going to take everything I have to end fortunate dispersion. Let's be completely honest after what we just witnessed with the overpin. But it's going to take fortunate dispersion and target selection to get through this problem. So as we approach, get a little cheeky here. We get a little bit of vision on him, just enough to set 2 fires and do a little bit of damage. That was basically a bonus because we fired through the island there. So that was a good opportunity to take. We were obviously going to have our guns fully reloaded again, so you might as well take a chancy shot like that if it does mean something like 2 fires. So he has used his damage control. He is vulnerable to dots. He is concerned that he will probably take dots. And if he takes dots, he'll eventually die. And my carrier is very concerned about running away, because if I was taking dots, I would most likely try and get a kill to make my life worth it. So I recognize they're crashing down on this carrier. They smell blood. It's in the water. I need to try and put this fire out. So as we're approaching this problem, I do have high explosive. It's the right ammo type. It's universally effective. Friendly aircraft carrier gets a little bit more damage on the cruiser, but the cruiser is no longer the closest target. It's, in fact, this DD that's coming in, and he's going to be a torpedo threat. So I decide, okay, take out the target that we can take out. It's always in your best interest to knock out the number of targets before the amount of damage. Don't go for the highest damage. Go for knocking targets out. So we take that guy out, show a little bit too much side to the enemy battleship. He citadels us. The torpedoes sent from the cruiser show up, and the enemy DD broadsides for an instant, attempting to potentially send torpedoes. So I just take the shot right there, and I intentionally aimed at the launchers, hoping that I would incapacitate or interrupt to prevent the potential torpedo. And I don't know how close we were, but we did stop it just in time. And this enemy battleship, he's super low. He can't do this. It ended up being one after another, whereas if the enemy would have all engaged all at the exact same moment and maybe had the target with the most health be the first one who engaged, it might have been a different story. You know, I would have to have worked on the enemy battleship. I would then take sustained fire from the cruiser or the DD and maybe torpedoes, and I would have been less healthy than I am now, and it could have been the difference between knocking me out and me knocking all 3 of those guys out. And it's just prioritizing the threat, prioritizing the most value that you can get per shot. And once you are comfortable doing that, any ship, any type, doesn't matter. You should make good decisions. And I think we made good decisions there. Knocking out the low health, moving on, knocking out the DD, moving on, knocking out the battleship, moving on. And now we've got a point advantage. And I am actively capturing the enemy base, preventing them from gaining any more points. There's only the enemy aircraft carrier left. This is great. This ended up being a fantastic match where, we sailed basically all over the map. We put out some fires at our base. We put out some fires in the center of the map. We attempted to put out fires on the east. Couldn't do that. But we were effective. We made a difference. We recognized where the enemy was attempting to take advantage, and we closed those openings. And it left us with a pretty manageable game, wouldn't you say? Like, I could have easily been overwhelmed if we weren't successful in going through each of the ships one by one, but as it stands, it worked out beautifully. So the enemy aircraft carrier is just harassing. He's obviously going to contest. We're not going to capture the base. There's not enough time. But we're just harassing him. We're showcasing that we have won the game, and gosh, does it feel good. It feels so good. Oh, and by the way, if you didn't know this, I am attempting to use the aircraft to absorb the fighter consumable. I don't know if they patched it out, but that's what I'm doing right there. I'm tinting. And I'm just sailing over towards this guy. It doesn't matter. We might get a shot off just as he's sneaking behind the island. Whatever. It's wonderful that we had this game. Thank you again for watching it. It was a blast to play. If you would like to check out this type of game and more, you can always tune into my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Notser. I also obviously have YouTube, youtube.com/Notser, where we cover the game. And thank you. Thank you so much for checking it out. We got 5 kills, Kraken Unleashed. Good base XP game. My recruitment link is on the screen if you're on North America, and you can check that out and join. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day.